You probably don't think about it when you're shopping for groceries, filling up your gas tank, or paying your taxes. But there's one law in America that touches all of that, and more. It's called the Farm Bill, and even though it sounds like something only farmers should care about, it's a $1 trillion piece of legislation that shapes our food system, economy, and even climate policy. And the 2025 version, it's a big one. Today on Brain Snacks, we're breaking down what the Farm Bill actually does, what's changing this year, and why it matters more than you might think. Let's start with the basics. The Farm Bill is a giant law that Congress usually passes every 5 years. It bundles together all kinds of programs related to farming, food assistance, rural development, conservation, and climate. Think of it like a Swiss Army knife. One law with dozens of tools inside. The original version was passed back in 1933 during the Great Depression. Back then, the goal was to stabilize prices, support struggling farmers, and prevent another Dust Bowl. But over the decades, it's grown. A lot. Today, the Farm Bill isn't just about agriculture. It's also the primary law funding SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which used to be called food stamps. In fact, nutrition programs make up nearly 80% of the Farm Bill's spending. So even if you never set foot on a farm, this bill likely impacts your life. Here's a quick breakdown of where the money goes. The total price tag for the 2025 Farm Bill is estimated at over $1 trillion. This reflects the projected spending over a 10-year window, from 2025 to 2035. Out of that, around 80% goes to nutrition programs, mostly SNAP. Another 10 to 15% goes to crop subsidies, insurance programs, and disaster relief. The rest covers conservation incentives, agricultural research, forestry, and rural infrastructure, like broadband and clean water. It's a massive piece of the federal budget, and a quiet engine behind both food security and farm production in the U.S. So what's new in the 2025 version? A lot. And now without controversy. Congress missed the original deadline back in 2023 and had to pass a 1-year extension just to keep things running. That gave lawmakers more time to negotiate, but also more room to argue. Now both the House and Senate Agriculture Committees are finalizing their proposals, and the final bill is expected to pass sometime later this year. But there are still major debates on spending limits, food assistance rules, and climate funding. If it passes on schedule, it'll be a small miracle. Let's talk about some of the biggest updates on the table. First up, SNAP, the government's food assistance program. It helps more than 40 million Americans, and it's where most of the Farm Bill's money goes. But in 2025, some big changes are on the table. Here's what's being proposed in plain English. More people would have to work to qualify. Right now, if you're an adult under 50 without kids, you usually have to work or be in a job training program to keep your SNAP benefits for more than 3 months. The new bill would raise that age limit to 55, so more people would have to follow those rules. Some states would have to bring back limits on how much money people can have. Today, many states don't check how much you have in savings or assets when you apply for food help. The new rules would bring back those checks, so if you have a little too much saved, even if your income is low, you might not qualify. Stricter paperwork. There would be more checks on your income, and people might have to verify their information more often to keep getting benefits. On the flip side, the bill would make it easier to use SNAP online, a big help for people in rural areas or without transportation, and it would test a new idea, giving people a little extra money if they spend more on fruits and vegetables, kind of like a bonus for healthier choices. Finally, there's more funding to crack down on fraud, like stolen EBT cards or dishonest retailers. Some say these changes will help make the system fairer and more sustainable. Others worry that it could push struggling people off the program or make it harder for them to qualify. But SNAP is just one part of the story. There's also new funding for climate-smart agriculture, meaning programs that reward farmers for cutting emissions, improving soil health, or using less water. There's more money for rural infrastructure, especially broadband internet and clean water systems, and new support for beginning farmers trying to break into the industry. And finally, there are tweaks to crop insurance and disaster aid in response to rising weather risks. The Farm Bill also has a ripple effect on the entire food industry. Subsidies for crops like corn, soybeans, wheat, and dairy directly influence the cost of processed food, from cereal to soda to frozen pizza. Ethanol requirements, for example, drive demand for corn and affect gas prices at the pump. And SNAP benefits? They're a major source of revenue for grocery stores, especially giants like Walmart and Kroger, which earn billions through food assistance spending. In fact, the processed food industry relies heavily on SNAP. That's because a big chunk of SNAP spending goes toward packaged and shelf-stable foods, things like frozen meals, snacks, sugary drinks, and breakfast cereals. They're convenient, inexpensive, and easy to stock in stores across the country. So when lawmakers debate cutting SNAP or adding new restrictions, it's not just about government spending, it's also about how much food companies sell and what ends up on your plate. In that way, the Farm Bill doesn't just steer farm policy, it shapes the entire supply chain behind the food economy. Of course, not everyone agrees on what the Farm Bill should look like. There are some big criticisms. Many argue it disproportionately benefits large agribusinesses at the expense of small or independent farmers. Others say it doesn't do enough to address public health, given how much support goes toward commodity crops and not fruits, vegetables, or healthy local foods. Environmental groups want tougher conservation rules and stronger incentives for climate-friendly practices. Fiscal conservatives, meanwhile, want to cut nutrition spending and shrink the bill's overall size. And then there's the complexity. Dozens of programs, agencies, and eligibility rules, which opens the door to accusations of waste, inefficiency, or even corporate welfare. So how does this thing even get passed? The answer: political horse trading. The Farm Bill survives because it brings together strange bedfellows. Urban Democrats usually want strong nutrition programs. Rural Republicans want to protect farm subsidies. And both sides need each other's votes. That's what makes it one of the last major bipartisan laws that still manages to pass, even if it takes a few extra months and plenty of deal-making behind closed doors. In 2025, the biggest fights are over. How much to spend overall, whether SNAP should come with more strings attached, and whether climate-related funding should be mandatory or optional. But as the world changes, the Farm Bill faces an uncertain future. There's growing pressure to rethink how America supports its food system, from what we grow to how we grow it, to who benefits. And on top of that, there's a rising push in Washington to rein in federal spending. Some lawmakers are calling for across-the-board cuts, and since the Farm Bill is one of the biggest single pieces of discretionary legislation, it could end up in the crosshairs. In other words, even programs that have traditionally enjoyed bipartisan support, like farm subsidies or food aid, may face new scrutiny in the name of budget discipline. And the biggest target? SNAP, the nutrition program that makes up roughly 80% of the Farm Bill's total spending. With such a large footprint, it's often the first place lawmakers look when they want to trim costs. The bottom line: the Farm Bill may not get the spotlight like other massive legislation, but it quietly shapes your grocery bill, your tax bill, your climate footprint, and your community's future. It's a trillion-dollar mirror of what America values. And every 5 years, we get to take another look. That's all for this episode. Thanks for tuning into Brain Snacks. Subscribe for more big ideas explained simply.